Welcome to the Bullcaster Podcast, episode 36. Our guest today is John Baldasare, a longtime karter, seen mostly at the biggest show of them all, SuperNats. We're actually going to get him on here in just a little bit and talk about how he's done so many of those events. But first, let's knock out some current events here, Dirk. It's actually Monday, the 26th of July. It's been about a month since our actual recording. Obviously,
has been a while, yeah.
Yeah, we had a few of them right in a row there. So we were kind of talking about not having a whole heck of a lot of new things to say, but it's been a while, and yeah, we've actually had a race in between then and now.
Yeah.
Tri-C round 6, I believe it was.
Yeah, so 2 rounds left for that. We both got to race, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You had you just had a weird day.
It was a weird day.
I don't even know if it was up and down. You just had a weird day.
Yeah, I was joking with some people that I've had a lot of good days.
Yeah.
Or at least, decent days. So it was my turn. My turn to have some bad luck and have some things, go haywire on me. But yeah, we were trying to play around with some different things and learn for obviously Rock Vegas. Trying to do the summer 100 that Tracy was putting on. Try to get a couple of bucks, but obviously that went haywire.
That's out the window now.
So we're not. I mean, if I do run the next one, it'll just again be for S&Gs and to learn a little bit.
Well, I think you actually are going to be doing some 4-stroke racing.
Well,
soon.
that's the other thing too. Hopefully, the things come together to be able to get back into 206 and get testing at the next Tri-C, because I'm supposed to go do Cup Karts Grand Nationals over in Indiana with RLV. So I'm really excited about that. But hopefully I can get in the seat before I actually go that way.
Remember how to drive one of those again?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I can probably figure it out pretty quick, but as you and I both know, you got to be a little bit more smooth. You got to be a little bit more precise because you just don't have the juice. And of course, racing them is a little bit different. But
right.
And then you also were running Tracy, and obviously you're in a championship hunt there, and it was not your best day.
No, I just screwed the pooch in quali. I just overdrove the piss out of it in turn 1 on both laps, and then worst qualifying of like 11th or something.
Yeah, we started heading the forward direction again. We were on
Nuovo, probably the worst track ever we've ever designed here. No, but it was a stacked field on top of that. Blake Nash is out. Ethan Hogue came back out, so a few top runners again.
A few guys getting ready for the shootout.
Yeah, and I just it was already a fast track, and those guys have their driving dialed in and their equipment, and it was just a deep field. I mean, even if I didn't screw up quali, I think I maybe would have been about 4th or 5th, which I would have taken. But it was a deep field, and honestly, it was a lot of fun though.
Yeah,
because I'm like, all right, Blake's walking away from me, but if I can maintain that gap, at one point, that would be pretty neat. So
and you were marching forward, actually. I mean, you had to start, as you say, pretty far back, 8th or something like that, but you were actually rolling through the field pretty good.
I think I moved up to 8th and then 7th between the 2 heats, and I felt pretty good about maybe a podium, but for sure top 5, and I just went out too high of a pressure for the main. So
because you were rolling in the first few laps of the main, and it did start to look like you backed up a little bit, or at least didn't go forward anymore.
Yeah, at least around the halfway point, the car tightened up, and then I just slowly started trickling back, and I think I finished like 9th or something. So not my best day, but
still close in the championship.
Yeah, went from 1st to 3rd, but it's still pretty tight between Gutierrez and Lampy and myself. So 2 rounds left. I now got to fight back and do the first half of the year again.
Well, I think you might be able to add Ryan Vincent's name in there. He's starting to close the gap with you guys as well.
Yeah, for sure. He, I think he just won this last week in LAKC.
He just won this last week in LAKC after finishing 2nd to Blake at that race, at the Tri-C race. So he's coming on strong, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does at the shootout this weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and actually we were talking about, obviously the summer shootout. It's a big event. We're excited to do it, and by this point, it'll be done. But also by this point, when this comes out, we'll be right on the other side of the Classical Grand Prix. Which
another
is
big event for
us.
Yeah,
it's another big event. It's a big one for the Arrive and Drive racers here at Cal Speed, basically the Monaco, if you will, of our series there. And we're putting that thing on there in a few weeks, and again, we'll be around the other side. And like we were just talking about big events and kind of what they bring to the table, well, the guest we have today is exclusive to big events. That's what he does, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see how, why, and everything else that he does. So without further ado, let's bring him on here, John Baldasare. John Baldasare, thanks for coming out, brother.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's actually funny. I told my wife that I was going to be doing this podcast, and she was like, "You're doing a podcast? I hope you don't f*** it up."
And so, just like that.
We'll see.
Yeah. So we do these things on Mondays. It's kind of when we get a chance to, relax or whatever, but every once in a while we throw in one of these things. Most people have 9 to 5s. So they are having a hard time getting out here on a Monday. What do you do for a living and that you were able to cut loose?
Yeah, so I am a talent manager. I represent actors, writers, and directors, a partner in a company based in Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Gotcha. And how long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it going on 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, straight out of college.
So was that the point? Like, I'm going to go to college to do this?
No, that was the backup plan. The main plan was to be a race car driver, which obviously did not happen. Right. But my father, being who he is, made sure that I went to school. And, while I was there, I was doing a paper on a guy named Mike Ovitz, who started CAA, one of the biggest creative artists agency, one of the biggest talent agencies around. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think might try that. And ended up, taking some meetings and interviews and ended up getting offered a job. And 20 years later, it's what I'm doing.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool. I mean, first shot out. Lucky bastard. Yeah. Straight in there. And so you said talent manager of these different, actors and whatnot. Mm-hmm. What exactly do you have to do? Is that negotiating their contracts or deals, or what exactly does that do?
It's a lot of, it's a lot of different, I wear many hats. I kind of think of it like the hub of a wheel, it's kind of like I'm in the center and I work with their talent agent, an attorney, a publicist, a wealth manager, accountants, all those type of things. In order to make sure that the business end of their acting career is taken care of, where they can just focus on being an artist.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Okay.
So they can just go to work, do their deal, and they've got people handling all the stuff on the back end.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of facilitate that as the manager of those things.
Yeah. So the kind of day-to-day management, of their career is what I do. I'm in contract negotiations. If there's something to do, tax benefits, I set up corporations. It's just many hats. Yeah.
Gotcha. And is it, who do you manage, if I can ask? Is that a thing that you can throw out there?
It's so funny because people do ask that. Unfortunately, we don't really divulge it, and the only reason why is because if I leave somebody off, I could get in trouble.
All right. So for the next 12 minutes, just go.
Yeah, exactly. The entire list. Yeah. But people that I've worked with in the past, Angelina Jolie, I've worked with, Eva Mendes, Patrick Stewart, Stephen Ray, Sam Worthington. I work with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Paul Dano.
So you're still, cutting your teeth and trying to get some
exactly.
That's pretty damn cool.
He gets done with Angelina. He's like, one day I'll get that superstar,
Yeah, exactly. I'm still holding on. Yeah. Although I'd be happy with just a Big Bang Theory type actor,
Right,
making $1 million an episode.
Man.
Sounds good to me.
We're good. And when you're doing those kinds of stuff, do you? I had heard or I had read that a lot of actors and what they don't want to go see the premieres of their stuff, or some of them don't even watch the because they do the art but they don't go as a agent. Is it like prerequisite? Are you going to be watching this stuff on purpose, or you kind of avoid it, or what?
I leave it up to the client. Honestly, I've done a couple carpets and left with the client, and they situate it in such a way that anybody who's attending it, whether they're a fan or photographer, don't actually see us slip out the back door. But many a nights end up with just going to dinner and, having a drink or whatever, because we've already seen the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Once it gets to a publicist phase, we've already seen the movie, know what it's about, and it's kind of like, okay,
Do you have as being the talent manager and stuff do you have to do any of that kind of front of house stuff with media, or they don't really care about you so much, they want to see the talent?
Yeah, they just want to see the talent.
Yeah.
So if you ever watch a red carpet and you just see the people kind of milling around in the back, that's me.
Okay.
Normally back to the camera and just letting the client do the
professional
thing,
miller.
Yeah, exactly.
Many years experience.
Yeah.
How would, aside from, the college deal and getting it, how would someone go about trying to do what you do? aside from just straight out of college?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that the business is who you know. It's really not. If you work hard and put in the time and the effort and get the education. I mean, everybody who comes into our business typically has to have a bachelor's of some type. I have an economics degree, so it didn't have anything to do with movie making or screenwriting or anything. It was more just something that interested me, and so once I got that first interview with an agency, then it kind of was a launching point into meeting other people within the industry. And actually, I had interviewed at William Morris, which was another big agency at the time. And that HR person told me, hey, I have a friend over at this management company. Why don't you go over and talk to them and see if that's something interesting? And so I did. And they, I did one interview and they offered me the job.
And, and you've been there ever since?
Not with that company, but I've been in the business ever since.
Gotcha.
I was with that company for about 9 years.
Okay.
And then at my current company, basically what ends up happening is, you get to a point where there's that glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And, especially with working with these high level actors, you get to the point where you want to go out on your own at, 24, 25, 26 and find, your own people to work on. Mm-hmm. And so once I kind of hit that, I knew, okay, then I need to be my own boss and I need to find like-minded people who have been in that similar situation that we can go invest our money and start our own company.
Oh,
and that's
okay.
exactly what we did.
Gotcha.
Oh,
so you're, as you say, a partner. You're part of that top level deal. Mm-hmm. Are you still as involved with all, like as you say, with all the different kinds of actors, or is it now kind of more of a management of the company, less management of the people?
I wish that were the case. It's actually compounded my workload. So I actually work with all 30 clients that I have, and then I'm also running the business day to day.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds completely
but
easy.
I'm happy to be here, so I don't have to deal with all of that for a couple hours.
Yeah. And you're with clients. That's all it is.
Exactly. Yeah, I just called my assistant from the parking lot. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be in a meeting for a couple hours.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, we'll cut that out so we make sure you don't get in trouble. That's a pretty neat deal. That's pretty cool, and obviously it's something you enjoy, and it's pretty fun to do and whatnot, which is obviously part of the plan when you're getting a job is that you enjoy it. Have you done, as you said, you went to school for economics and whatnot. Had you ever been involved in any acting or like that as a kid or younger?
No, it's crazy because my kind of interest grew out of doing a backlot tour at the Universal Studios.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you guys have ever been there they do a tram ride through the backlot and they show you.
I've done it once, and I think Derek literally owns part of Universal. He's been there so damn much.
Well,
you have? Okay.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I have passes there, so we're always going there and stuff.
Well, I live literally 10 seconds from there.
Oh, wow.
My backyard overlooks the back lot. So there's a Crash 747 in my backyard, Bates Motel, Psycho House, it's all right there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's crazy.
So how old were you when you did that first studio tour?
So I think I was 13, 14, and I saw one of the sound stages, and I saw these guys, coming in and out, moving stuff, whatever. And then I saw the actors being brought in from the trailers, and I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but that looks really fun. I'd be super interested in doing that. And then a couple years later, I went back, and they were doing promos for Saved by the Bell.
Oh, wow.
And so Mark Palkosser was there, Tiffany Amber Thiessen, I forget if Screech was there. But anyway, I saw them doing kind of promos or, filming these promos. And so I was just enamored with it. And I was watching them film and, kind of the movements and everything. And my parents were finally like, are we going to go and do something else? Or are you going to sit here all day? And I'm like, I'm going to sit here all day. So I was this really creepy kid who was just watching every single thing that they did.
Taking notes.
Yeah, exactly. And then cut to maybe 6-7 years later, Mark Palkosser started running shifter cards.
Oh, okay.
And so I was
that's
stalking him at Xplex and stuff. And I was like,
wow.
I saw you do this thing and everything else. And he's like, that's crazy. So,
man.
Yeah,
he's not even in your class. You're going out there and driving with him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Proximity.
Yeah.
I know he did the pro celebrity race, and I think it was halfway decent. I think I don't know if
Long Beach.
Yeah, I don't know if he won it the time he did it.
I don't remember.
Because that's Zach Bell, right? Who were talking about?
Who?
From Saved by the Bell?
Zach.
Zach Morris.
Zach Morris.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Zach Bell.
Zach
Exactly.
Bell. Zach
exactly.
Morris. I actually know Zach Bell. I got stuck in my head. But yeah, no, that's so funny. I had no idea he was doing karting too.
Yeah,
part of it.
It was him, Sean Patrick Flannery, and Alfonso Ribeiro.
Yeah. Like Sean Buer from Go Racing Magazines told me a few stories about those guys running on it was Promoto. Was it still Promoto at the time?
Yeah. And they were running with Jean Marconi over at JM Racing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were really good.
That's what I heard.
know Alfonso was pretty good, from what I heard.
Yeah, but they put the time in, and definitely, I mean, just for as much as they love acting, I think they love racing just as much.
We actually had, Mark was out here a few years ago now. I can't remember. I think he was part of, I think it was a media day that the Speedway was putting on. And it was him and a few others that were out here. And he killed most of the people. He was fast as hell right out of the gate. And he you could see it in his, he's taking a little bit, we're in the arrive and drives. We're just doing the rental cars, but he's taking it more serious than the rest of them. And he's killing them. Mm-hmm. It's here's all the coaching you need right here.
Well, and his brother's big in motocross.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I think his name's Mike Gosler. He was McGrath's mechanic for years and years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they came from the motocross side, and then that's how he got hooked up into the shifter carts.
Right. Wow. Probably be able to, again, we've said it with other people who do two-wheel stuff, especially if you're going to get the okay to go do anything, it's probably not going to be on two wheels. It's probably going to be on four.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's written in your contract.
I believe it. Yeah, for sure.
I worked with Justin Chambers on Grey's Anatomy, and they had that clause in his contract because he was a big motorcycle rider. And they said, nope. I said, okay.
You can do this and make money or do that and not.
And he also still rode his Harleys, just
of course. Yeah. You're not going to get the itch out of him. He's still going to have to do something. Yeah. Well, obviously, you just talk about running shifter carts and stuff like that with Mark and whatnot. How did you get into racing originally, and were you part of a racing family as a kid?
I was, born into it. My grandfather was a crew chief for an Indy 500 team back in the 50s and 60s, maybe into the early 70s. Just an awesome guy. And, I would see him, he's from Ohio, and, we had moved out here, and I would go back every year, and he would just tell these amazing stories about all these great, drivers. He put Fangio through his rookie test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh my God, he would just tell these amazing stories and, about the big wrecks and, about Fulmer George, who's Tony George's father, and, kind of how that came together. He was actually there when Fulmer and Mary met.
Oh, wow.
And he was telling him, guys don't get together. Mary, he's a race car driver. Yeah. And Fulmer, you have no, business being part of that family. And, they end up, getting married and having a kid. And so he's just had these amazing stories. And so it's funny because while, I don't think I was destined to be a driver, it was definitely, kind of nudged and forced upon me, if you will.
Right.
And out of my 30 cousins that I have, I'm the only one, well, besides my sister, who ended up racing. So.
Got it. And so you talk about your grandfather you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So your dad did not race?
He did go-karts, yeah.
Okay.
For a couple of years, but he and my mom got married young, and he owned a business at the time, and so I think it was, and then he ended up buying a new go-kart, I think a McCullough Twin or something like that, and it got stolen out of his garage before he ever got to drive it.
Man.
Get out.
Yeah, he saved up all of his money and, did the whole thing and ended up getting stolen. So, so I think he kind of quit early and then, had a family. And so he basically was like, okay, this is what my son's going to do.
Did you grow up out here, or I know you said your grandpa was in Ohio?
Yeah, so I was born out here in Northern California. So places like Prairie City, Davis-Dixon, those were all my kind of jam. Mm-hmm. Born out here, and then ended up getting my first quarter midget at 4.5.
Well, so you got started on the roundy rounds.
Yeah, exactly. Because back then, I don't think you could do go-karts until you were maybe 10, 11.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Because they didn't have cadets or anything.
What year is that roughly?
This was
back then?
1981.
Oh, the 80s, yes. Yeah, I don't think there was anything even approaching cadets.
Just the full size
until
with
the 90s.
Short pedals.
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you had a necessity to do the roundy round because at what do you say, 4 years old, right? Yep. There's nothing else to do at that point. There's no kid carts or nothing. Yeah. But quarter midgets had been a thing for a bit at this point. I remember Billy Cleveland talking about getting into quarter midgets originally. Where did you go and race the quarter midgets, and how did so your dad was like, we're going to do this out of the gate? he started, or were you like, I want to do it?
Oh, no. He was like, you're going to do this, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, I don't think at 4.5 you had much decision making.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, all right, let's go. So he, first time out, he took me out to a parking lot, just to try and get me used to it. And, I was running, I guess there was kind of some cement, planters and stuff like that I was just kind of going around. And then eventually I kept going faster and faster to where at one point I was heading towards his truck that he brought, the thing was in the back of the truck. And he ended up grabbing the entire thing by the, frame rails, if you will, and just by sheer strength, grabbed the thing and was able to hit the kill switch because I was going dead for it. And so came home, told my mother what had happened, and she was like, all right, let's get him to the track.
Oh,
and
cool.
so that's how it started.
Gotcha. And is there a lot of kids to race with? I mean, I watch, I've seen some quarter midget stuff now, and it looks like they do cap the number of, it's a small track.
Yeah.
They cap the number on, but I don't know if they run like multiple heats or how many there are.
Yeah, so I think back then when I was running it was about 10, I think was what the track would hold. Because they're like super small tracks. I don't even know, you go around 5-6 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's about 10 kids. But yeah, you'd go, B, C, D mains.
Right.
Yeah, in order to graduate through. Basically like what sprint cars do.
Okay.
And so right out of the gate, you guys are getting into it. Was it, the path is set, we're going to become a race car driver from the get-go from your dad, or was it just we're going to do this because it'd be fun?
I think it was more like, let's just do this to be fun. So what you had to do was basically go out, and in order to get licensed was a training cart. So you go out there, hop in it, and they would have somebody, which you could never do today, but a guy would be standing on the back of it, like on the bumper.
Oh, gotcha.
And he would use almost like a clutch or a brake on a motorcycle, and he would govern the speed through that. So you didn't have any pedals, you just were turning the thing, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
you're right, that would never happen these days.
It would never happen these days. So he did it, I think, about 2 sessions, and then the third session, my dad actually jumped on the back of it, and he was governing the throttle.
Oh, wow.
Because the guy had me going so slow. He was like, I want to see if you can drive this thing.
Right.
So we did that. And,
so by governing the throttle, you mean wide open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And so we did one practice round, and that was it. He was like, we're going racing.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to wait like 4 months before my first race. So I would take my own quarter midget out and just kind of practice with it. Mm-hmm. And by the time it was 5, we were on like full bore.
How'd you do? Right out of the gate.
I ended up flipping my first race.
Oh, jeez.
Which scared the hell out of my mother. So.
Yeah. It was either that or the truck, though.
I was good.
So yeah, exactly. She probably preferred that.
Yeah, no trucks to hit. But you flipped. No, was it just was it a grip flip kind of thing, or was there content? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we were running, it was kind of a novice program, first time out. But what they used to do was, so they had shocks on them, but there was a class called Junior Rigid. And basically, they would dial all the shocks out, so you'd have full grip in the thing.
Oh, wow.
Which was fine on a dirt track. But as soon as you got it on asphalt, it was, here you go.
Didn't even ask. So you're doing the asphalt thing.
I was actually doing both.
Okay.
I was practicing on a dirt track, but then ended up going to the asphalt track, and that's where I ended up flipping.
For your first race, it was on the asphalt.
First race.
So now you go from, okay, it's got a little slip angle, it rotates a little bit, less grip, obviously, to full grip.
Full grip.
And if you have any kind of early turn in or anything like that, and you try to put that extra wheel in, and over she goes.
Yeah, so you're getting that rear hike pretty good, and then it just sent me right into the wall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you flip her over.
Yep.
And A-okay?
No, ended up in the hospital.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Sprained my back. Yeah, so I think I was out of it for maybe about 4 weeks, something like that, and then right back into it.
Wow. So, and mom was A-okay? She's like, oh, yeah, for sure. Sprain back, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, once you see that, it's kind of like, all right, any crash you can have, that's probably the worst one. So it's like, any contact, whatever, she was fine with. But so I think it was more my dad just being like, this is the path, this is what we're doing, and, hop on board.
I suppose if you had a succession of these same things, then perhaps it wouldn't have gone as well. I'm assuming that you get the flip out of the way and maybe do a little bit less flipping as you go forward?
One would think, but the next year we went up to Tacoma, Washington. There's a little track up there called Little Wheels, and it was the Grand Nationals, and ended up running that same junior rigid package, and ended up going out, and I think I started maybe 7th, 8th somewhere, went up through the pack, and ended up, I was leading it and ended up flipping it again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
same deal, just grip?
Same deal. Yeah, just grip. I mean, they would probably have a good 200-300 quarter midgets there.
Wow.
Running for 4 or 5 days.
Right.
And just putting the rubber down. And so got the best of me, and then they, put the thing upright and started in the back again, came all the way through the field and did the same damn thing.
You flip it again?
Flip it again.
Same race.
Same race.
They're like, you just felt like you needed to wait till you got to the lead to do this every time?
Yeah. I want to go out in style.
Yeah.
So, in that racing, you basically get 3 penalty points and then you're black flagged.
Okay.
So that was my second penalty point.
But usually the penalty points are for what you do to other people.
Yeah. I was just dumb enough to do it to myself.
Oh, man.
Anyway, I had 2 penalty points, so I thought, okay, I'm going to the back, and then I'm going to, go to the front again. And sure enough, some of the officials were just like, nope, we've seen too much. So they ended up black flagging me after the second one.
Oh, wow.
And so, there's a picture that I don't even know who took the picture, but it's my dad carrying me away. And I'm literally like over his shoulder, and I'm bawling because I just want to get back into the quarter midget and go race again.
Right.
Is it 6 years old, you said?
It was at 6, yeah.
Wow.
Were you guys doing a bunch of practice or kind of just going out and racing?
No, we never practiced. Like, even in karts, it was a really weird thing. Like, back then, it's not like today. It's not, go out Wednesday, Friday.
And even now, I know for the dirt track stuff, there's not many test days except for the race week, because of track prep, all that other kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And there's not much to change, to be honest. Like, especially on a track like that, it's like, what the gear is, kind of what the pressures are and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of like, okay, just go out and run. So actually what I would do is I would go out and play soccer in the morning on Saturday. I'd miss all the practice, and then I would just show up for the heat races and then race the main and go home.
You're nice and limber, though. So,
yeah, exactly.
John's already warmed up. He's ready for those flips.
That's right.
Oh, jeez.
You guys want to see something? Here we go.
That's awesome.
Wow. So, golly. So it doesn't go too swimmingly there. You doing the Grand Nationals, and you end up getting pulled. And obviously, this is for is that a heat race? Is it a championship? Like, this
was the main.
This is the main. Oh, man.
This is for all the goods.
So,
and they used to have these like 4-foot trophies, which are
taller
really
than
cool.
you.
Yeah.
Taller than me. I always wanted one and never got one. So.
Oh, man. So, but that's the rub there, right? Is that you obviously were the best on the day.
Yes.
You don't go from the ass end to the front in quarter midgets out of 8-10 kids on without being the fastest, the best. Just also really good at going on your lid.
Yeah, exactly.
So, did you do any more racing in the quarter midget stuff after that?
Yeah, so I did quarter midgets from about 5 until I was 11. And
Oh, wow.
then I called it a career. So yeah.
And you are actually you have to like get the hell out of quarter midgets at a certain age, right? I can't. Is it 16?
Yeah, they go up to 16, but because I graduated really, really quickly, so had that flip and whatever, and then I think maybe the next year my dad ended up purchasing. So Jeff Gordon was actually in quarter midgets when I started.
Oh,
he
right,
was
right.
kind of like 12, 13 and getting out of it, and so my dad ended up purchasing all of his engines.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. So there was this junior rigid, and then it went to modified B, then A, and then A was your top class.
Okay.
But A tended to be, kids that were probably 14 to 16, who had done it since they were, 6, 7, 8 years old. My dad, being who he is, was just like, no, we're just going to go to the top class. Like, you were good in this class. Like, we're just going to put you in A. So by the time I was 8, 9 years old, I was racing against all of those 16-year-old kids.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And is there weight minimums and stuff like that? You guys having to add weight to the car?
Yeah, so we'd basically build these like 1 foot by 1 foot sheets of lead, and they would just stick them under my seat. So I probably weighed, at that time, I was probably between 70 and 80 pounds. And I think I had to be like 130 pounds.
I was gonna
race
say.
against those kids.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so they just stick it all under my seat.
Your dad's not grabbing a hold of that car anytime
No,
soon.
absolutely not.
Never mind it going faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So you go all in on this the quarter midget deal, and obviously you're at the sharp end and bloody quick when you're just starting out at 6 or there. And how does the rest of the career go? I mean, you get some wins, get some championships.
Yeah, absolutely. So I ended up, I started, I think that winter series, I ended up starting, winning some races here and there. And then by the end of that year, I think I was 9 at the time, I was actually beating the kids who were 16 years old.
Oh,
and these are all my friends. Like, quarter midgets is very community oriented, like, the same people week in and week out. But then afterwards you'd have a barbecue or go out to dinner.
Cool.
It was very much, kind of that regional racing.
Right.
And so all of these kids who, I looked up to and were like, rock stars in my world because I knew that they were going to sprint cars, which is something that I was super interested in doing.
Right.
They were all my friends when they were beating me, but as soon as I beat them, then they wouldn't talk to me anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so it kind of sucked.
That does suck. And I mean, I suppose, and at that time, Jeff Gordon's not Jeff Gordon. He's just one of the kids that moved out of quarter midgets, right?
Exactly.
So that doesn't mean anything other than obviously we know now probably decent equipment.
Yeah.
So you're making things happen. You're beating them, and you're working your way on up. And by 11, you say you guys aren't doing it anymore. Was that because you didn't want to do quarter midgets, or did you move on to karts?
No, I'd basically at that time, I'd won everything there was to win.
Oh.
There was a hot shoe down here in Pomona, actually, right across from the drag strip, across the 10 freeway. His name was Mikey Israel, and literally he was kind of a karting god, if you will, of Southern California, and I guess to an extent I may have been in Northern California. And so he and I a couple times a year would go head to head, and either in my backyard or his backyard. And so we ended up having a race at the end of the year, which is a big final race of the year, up in San Jose at a place called Baylands. And we had some special motors, and we had found tillets and pumper carburetors was a big thing back then in order to get some speed. And so I think I'd won like 9 races in a row going into that one. And I ended up beating Mikey in that race. And then it was kind of like, well, where do we go from here? There's not much more to win. I mean, I could do it for the next 4 or 5 years, but it really just didn't make any sense.
And so you're running NorCal, and then you'd come down here and you'd run SoCal.
Yeah.
But I know quarter midgets is not just a California thing. So is there not this travel aspect outside of the state?
Not really. And
I
think,
guess you went to Oregon, right, at Tacoma. But I mean, were you doing much of that?
Not really, because all of the best quarter midget drivers were in California, so you didn't need to travel.
Right.
Like if you were going there,
They're
were
coming
going
here.
to like be a ringer, beat
Okay.
up on people, and it was like, what's the point? You might as well stay here. The other thing too is they don't race in the rain, so
Right.
if you go back east, you don't know if you're going to run.
Oh, wow,
right.
yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Good point. So
Yeah.
you're sticking home because this is where the talent is anyway.
Yeah.
And you get to 11, and at this point, you have no friends anymore because you beat them all, right? Your dad's like, all right, what's something else? So
Right.
what do you do at 11? You just go, all right, well, we're the best and we're done?
We with that, we were kind of, that left us searching, to be honest with you, because I was such a small kid. Like, I'm almost 6 foot now, but back then I was super short, light, so there wasn't the opportunity to go to anything like micros or a 360 or anything, just because I was kind of too small in order to race those things. So my dad took me out to Blue Max Kart Club, which is up in Davis, and I watched them, but there weren't shifter karts, so it was all single speed. It was I guess whatever would be a KA now, that's what they're
Yamaha or KPVs,
exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, it was definitely can type racing.
Right, Yamaha, yeah.
Yeah. So we went out and saw it, but I was just like, I don't know, just wasn't really intrigued. And, it was run by a kart manufacturer, and I knew kind of, what that would look like because they only wanted a certain kart manufacturer to be there and stuff. And I was like, nah, this doesn't really fit for me. And again, sprint cars was actually something I was super interested in.
And but at 11, you're thinking about what manufacturer stuff is going to happen?
Oh, absolutely. Because in quarter midgets, it's a big thing as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there was a group out of Southern California. It was called, I think it was called Fast Track. This guy, George Goddard, owned it. So that was one faction. And then we were the Stanley faction. Do you guys know Robbie Stanley? He was a sprint car driver.
I don't.
His dad ended up starting Stanley quarter midgets. And so we were of that faction. So we had really seen politics go on. And I didn't want any part of that when I got into the next step.
The community is very, very strong with the drivers and the families and stuff like that you're saying. But there's also this other thing with the actual equipment.
Another element, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
I got you. So you were already like, okay, I've witnessed politics and stuff like that as a kid, or at least even if you're not sure if it's politics or anything, like, you still know what the heck is going on, and I don't like it.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, aside from being a roundy rounder anyway, why not? I mean, you're not grabbing gears in the quarter midget, are you?
No.
Right. So what was it about you didn't want to do the Yamahas or whatever? Was it, this isn't what I'm used to? It's not roundy round, or?
I think it was some of that. When I was coming up, AJ Allmendinger was racing. We were racing together, and then he ended up. So one of the quarter midget tracks was across the street at an OHV park called Prairie City up in Northern California.
Right.
And there was a go-kart track across the way. So he would actually race both
cool.
in a weekend. So he would run across the street, go race his go-kart race, and then run back and race the quarter midget races.
Wow.
And you never went over there and checked that out?
Not really. I think, I was kind of, and again, I think it was more that sprint car route. A lot of the kids that I knew that I looked up to were going that direction. I raced with like the Kading boys, and I would go out to sprint car races on Saturday nights.
Okay.
Like, that was much more interesting to me.
You stayed in what was relevant to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those guys were kind of like, what I guess Formula One or IndyCar guys are to go-karters, the World Outlaw guys are to quarter midget drivers.
Absolutely, yeah. And you were still doing dirt and asphalt.
Yep.
And it didn't matter what it was. You guys were kicking ass, taking names.
Absolutely.
So, and your size is what precludes you from being able to do the micros or whatever. Was that the entrance for the open wheels, or like midgets?
Yeah, winged micros, I think, was kind of would be the next step. Yeah.
And you're just flat out not big enough.
Not big enough.
Yeah. So we're playing the waiting game, and the round or the road course stuff isn't doing it for you. So what do you do? Play t-ball?
We
or I guess it'd be baseball at that point.
I suck at every other sport except racing.
That's my life.
Yeah. No, we hung it up, and I bugged my dad, to try and find something, but there just wasn't anything. He tried, and back then, kids will go, into 1600s or 2000s now at, 13, 14. Like, you didn't do that back then.
No.
You had to be 18, a legal adult, or get emancipated, which, trust me, I tried. And they were not going for that.
Wow. So you're 11 years old, and at the end of that, you end up just stopping, and you guys sell your stuff and whatnot. Was the idea to eventually get back to cars, or what do you do in the meantime? And do you actually go to do the car thing after that?
Yeah, so it was always, there was always some sense of like, we're going to get back into racing, but it's just, we just have to wait, and as hard as it is for me, it's just like, I told you at 6, I'm crying on my dad's shoulder. Like, that was me every day wanting to get back into something.
Man, especially when you were doing so damn well.
Yeah.
You go from being top of the mountain to, hey, here's a magazine.
Yeah,
Just
pretty much.
Read about it.
And I would literally like cut out different pictures and stuff and put them all on my walls of my room, just like to have that sense of being in touch with racing still.
Wow.
Right.
Watching on TV, going to the Saturday night races and whatnot. So
doing it all.
All you're doing is becoming more and more a fan, and the pit is just getting darker and darker because you're not getting a chance to do it. When do you get back in the seat?
So my dad was at a convention at Moscone Center down in San Francisco. It was like a trade show type thing, and he was in the golf industry, and so he was there, with a company that he distributed equipment for, and ends up he saw a Track Magic go-kart there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so at these conventions, you know, the guys all kind of want to go out at night and, you know, have some beers, do this and do that. That's not my dad. Like, he's just more like, oh, I'll just walk around this convention, see what's out there. And then I just want to kind of head back to the hotel. And so he ended up talking to this guy who was running Track Magic at the time named John Hart. And he was, I think, managing for Fausto and Eric, who started Track Magic. And they got to talking, and he was saying, you know, my son really wants to do this, but, you know, wants to get back into racing, but he just doesn't like the, you know, the single speed stuff. And he goes, well, there's this new thing called shifter cards. Have you heard of them? And he's like, no. He's like, well, come down to the factory and, you know, check them out.
And what year is this? How old are you still at this point?
This is probably 1992.
Okay, so you're still, we've gone about a year or so of you not racing at this point?
No, I think I was
couple years?
14, 15.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you could actually get into the micros and stuff if you wanted to, right?
Yep.
And you guys didn't go that route?
No, I think it was kind of a timing thing where, you know, my dad had ended up meeting John, and then subsequently he took me down to the factory and I met Mamo Gidley. And then Mamo became my new kind of like icon because...
Try to aspire to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So because I knew that, you know, he was not only doing shifter cards, but he was also doing car racing. And that's where kind of the switch happened. So my dad worked for this, or not worked for this company, but distributed equipment for an umbrella company called Textron Financial. And Textron Financial ended up sponsoring Bobby Rahal back in the day.
Oh, wow.
So we would go to Laguna every year and kind of be part of the VIP and the, you know, pit experience and everything. And then it was switch from sprint cars to IndyCar.
Right.
Like,
Which some sprint car guys have gone that route anyway. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That all kind of will go hand in hand. I mean, if you read anything Robin Miller's ever put together, right, that's the open wheel kind of path if you're going to do it that way, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you end up kind of going from, I'm going to be a sprint car driver, whatnot, to what's this go-kart thing all about, right? And you said 15, 16, and now it's shifters.
Yeah.
So you guys go to the factory, and what are your thoughts? Again, you say you meet Memo and the whole thing.
Yeah, so we went there. I saw them. I saw the front brakes on a go-kart. I thought that was really cool. You know, I'd never seen that before. And then I went out to Prairie City and watched Memo ended up racing. He was doing 80 shifter at the time, which was no front brakes. And then there was this thing called 125 shifter, which I had never seen. And so I go out there, and it's George Barrows, who's running for Track Magic, and Rainey from Sweet Tech.
Oh, wow.
He was running a 125.
Oh, cool.
That's how long I've been in this game.
Wow.
Rainey was racing.
Yeah.
Man.
So he was racing a Pavesi ICC engine, on an Emic chassis. And Rainey was one of the craziest drivers I've ever seen. He would come down the straightaway and just four-wheel lock up and drift it all the way into the first turn. It was crazy. So he and George were kind of dicing back and forth. So I turned to my dad and I said, that's what I want to do. And he goes, well, no, there's 80 shifter. And I go, yeah, but I want to go and do that. That looks like a lot more fun.
You definitely took one from your dad's page on that. Let's just go to the top.
Let's just go to the top.
Yeah. Why F around? Let's go make this thing happen. So you see this. So first you go to the factory, you check it out, you're like, this is badass. It looks cool. Then you go see it in person, and you're like, yep, I'm in. Where do you guys go from there?
So my dad ended up buying me one for 80cc shifter cart because he was just like, that 125 is too crazy for you right now. You've never done it before. For Christmas. And I think
first thing he does, looks at the front, he's like, no brakes.
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing
here, Dad? And I think I had 2 weeks off from school for Christmas. And that first week, of January 1st, whenever it was, we were already at the track.
So you guys are automatically going there and you start getting seat time. You said you were 16?
15.
15.
And the thing was, you couldn't race until you were 16. So my birthday has always screwed me up because it's always in July. Always in July. It's birthday. It's in July. And so every single time you start in the winter, you got to wait 6 months. So
you're like, damn it. But we can get seat time. We can do different things. And so you just go out and you start practicing for about half a year?
Yeah, started practicing, went out to Prairie City a bunch, went to Reno a bunch, and I was kind of that, ex-head who, I would go out there as soon as the 125s came out because, we all practiced together. I was like, I'm going out there. I'm going to learn from these guys.
Yeah.
And, they'd pump me off the track here and there, but I earned my stripes early enough that by the time that I started racing, I was pretty locked and loaded.
Gotcha. And so you start racing when you turn 16 straight away, mid-year. What year is that? 95, you said?
93.
93. I'm messing up the years big time. So 93, you're running, you start doing the 80cc thing. How's it go? Right? I mean, you've been practicing now for half a year. Like you said, locked and loaded.
Well, I was going to say, how did the first day go on the shifter? Did you take to it pretty good? Or
I took to it fairly well.
Now you're going rights and lefts, right?
Yeah.
It's all different.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it back then was, at least for American-made companies, was it was a butterfly shifter. It was not your standard lever shifter, so it was a butterfly behind your wheel.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like Formula One, up on the right, down on the left.
Yeah.
And so it was great for about the first 4 laps, and then you just get this incredible arm pump.
Yeah.
Because essentially what you were using was kind of like a clutch cable from a, CR125 or something, but you can imagine the force that you'd sit there, 40, 50 times a lap.
Yeah, the way you use the clutch right now on your get-go, but you're doing
that one time, now you're doing it,
Oh, man.
And now you
40
go from
times a lap.
using your whole arm to just your palm.
Exactly.
You're not even holding on to the wheel at a point.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was pretty much everything right out of the gate. That's the way they were designed?
Yes, everything was like that. Yeah. So, I was on the smaller side, but I had really big forearms.
Disproportionately huge. Popeye over here.
He was doing arm wrestling competitions to make extra money at the end. Yeah.
Exactly.
They actually were going to get him an over the top, but they didn't.
Oh, there you go.
Like that? All you got to do is move your thumb over. Anyway. So you're doing this, and who are you racing with at the time?
So Memo was at every single race. And because I was, I was in the Track Magic faction, if you will. He was kind of helping me out and kind of teaching me and stuff. So I was racing against him. I was racing against Mike Speed. Yeah.
Wow.
So because Alex and Scott were probably at that time maybe 8 and 10, something like that. So I was racing against him, and then a bunch of local guys, in the area, and a lot of those guys were like guys who were like during the week, like owned a Mako, an air conditioning repair guy or something. So it was like nobody was in shape, just come out, Ethan Wilson used to have a cigarette before he would go out and drive, I think he still does actually. But yeah, so those were the guys that I was racing against.
And hopefully the races weren't very long. They were doing like 5-lap heats or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. Basically, everybody would just give up, and that would be the end of the race.
Yeah. Right.
As soon as your arms gave out, you're just like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so that first year you start running the 80cc. How long are you in the 80cc? Well, 2 questions. Firstly, how long are you in the 80cc before you move up to 125? And B, when do they get a proper shifter on these things?
So
I had no idea about the butterfly thing. I had no idea.
So 80cc, I wasn't in it very long because, as I mentioned, my dad and my nature, to be honest, and especially now, is just go to the top. It's like
you prove that you can actually do it. So let's
exactly. Yeah, we were in Reno, and I think it was like my maybe second race or something. And I went over to Memo, and I was asking some like axle, advice or something like that. And he goes, listen, when you first start out, it's about gaining like, half a second here, half a second there. But, as you get better and better, it's about gaining tenths, right?
Yeah.
And he says, now you're my competition. You've gotten to the level to where I can't help you because I want to beat you. And so at that point I was like, oh, okay, took it as a feather in my cap, but at the same time, it's like, okay,
shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Like, actually I have to tune this thing myself. Yeah. And so it wasn't too much longer after that we ended up getting a 125 and like starting to work on that. The interesting thing is everybody, was on a Honda. We were the only ones on a Suzuki.
Oh.
And how and why does that happen? Because, again, you go to Track Magic, the whole thing. I would assume everybody's doing the same stuff power plant-wise, under the same organization, if you will.
Exactly. No, everybody was on a Honda. I don't think Rainey Rainey might have been doing some motors here and there. Steve Lampson's dad was doing some motors, on the Honda side. But for us, I actually got lucky because my uncle and my cousin owned a Suzuki dealership.
And now we know why you run a Suzuki.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Free motors.
Yeah.
So Jeff Stolzenberg, thank you very much. You helped start the career. So it was kind of funny because we showed up with the Suzuki and we're doing really well. And all of a sudden they started getting calls and wanting Suzuki engines shipped out to California. And
Oh, cool.
It was just like, oh, wow, you guys are, kind of helping me out by selling some motors and, doing really well.
Is this after you into that 125 gig?
Once we got into
I was
125.
going to say, because is there, 80 cc's, I don't know too much about it, but I assume there's 80 cc bikes. But
But was it all one manufacturer for the 80cc stuff?
No, you can run anything you want.
Okay.
So there was Suzuki's. Some guys were running Yamahas, and then, but predominantly it was Honda.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember when I first, I think we were first coming here, and I remember somebody had a Kawasaki.
Yep.
And they were but it was loud as piss, and it had just like this high whine instead of the blah of the Hondas.
Right.
It was the Kawasaki, a different muffler on it. It's annoying as hell.
I have a funny story about a Kawasaki, but we'll get there.
So you're going racing, and you move up to 125. Mamo Gidley is your competition, and when you're in the 125s, you going against. Is it Mamo and Co? Like, there's some other big names, or are we still going against the Mako guys?
No, once you graduated in 125s, like the Mako guys were all in the 80s just because
they were happy there.
Yeah, exactly. they thought I was crazy for going to 125. And then the other thing was the tires.
Oh.
Yeah. So on the 80s, you'd basically run what you guys would call the blue tire.
Okay.
Like
Oh, yeah.
Vinco.
Yeah.
And then, 125, you go up to the reds, if you will. And then there was different manufacturers of tires and then also different compounds. So, and it was pretty much open to whatever you wanted to run.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so at this point, this is still club racing, right, at the time? There's nothing...
Still club racing,
IKF?
But yeah, IKF, and it was some of the what's this region here? Region
This is
7?
7 down
Seven
here.
Yeah.
I think
11
you
is
got
11
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Region 7 guys were starting to come up because that's when, Mamo was racing a lot. George Barros was really, really good. And so they would come up to Dixon. And Dixon is one of those tracks where it's super short, but as short as it is, it's technical and really hard on your body. And so a lot of guys would come up and kind of do test and tune for the bigger races, right? Well, if they knew, like Dixon was kind of Tracks Magic's home track.
Right.
So, JM Racing would come up into, their neck of the woods and, there would kind of be these battles and then we would come down and, race at an Adams or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, again, everything is made back in the day at 20 some odd feet wide and all this other kinds of stuff. And so I've raced at Prairie City in 206 and I'm like, nothing faster than a KA should run out here. And you guys were doing shifters and stuff back in the day. And I know they still do up there. That still baffles my mind. So I would think that shifters, as they come on in the mid 90s, you're going way the hell faster than the track was designed for in the first place. Never mind your cornering speeds and everything like that because of the softer tires and all this other kind of stuff. When you make that transition to the faster, well, you didn't make a transition. Hell, you started straight into it. But I would think that's where, like with Pat's Acres, where I'm from, that's I think where you can't pass, or it's hard to pass. If you win here, you can win anywhere. Shit, man, half the tracks, or damn near all the tracks in NorCal, I feel like, would have been the same story.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was basically a straightaway, or you got to be really late on the brakes.
Man.
Yeah.
Like every single thing. It's funny because I raced a 125 against Joey Hand at Prairie City, and coming out of the last turn, getting onto the straightaway, he ended up making not a dive bomby move, but it definitely wasn't the cleanest pass, which, if you guys ever raced against Joey, that was kind of his MO. But anyway, he ended up making that move and I, pulled up alongside of him, and pretty much the straightaway was the only place to pass. Well, my throttle got stuck.
Oh, shit.
So I'm 6th gear, wide open at Prairie City going into that 180 bowl turn. And I go to hit the brakes, and I hit the brakes so hard that the disc separated from the caliper, just sheared the entire, from the hub.
Right.
Sheared the entire thing off. I ended up running under the fence, running into the scales, and
wow.
So
At least you didn't flip.
Yeah, at least it didn't flip. Exactly. End over end. But yeah, had, these tracks been wider, had a little bit more runoff, something like that, I could have grabbed the clutch lever or something. But,
like you said, it's literally you're going 180 and then actually immediately back over to the right. And no, there's not a whole hell of a lot of runoff on that. And it's a little bit banked. Hell, you might even jump that damn thing into the fence.
Yeah, or over the fence into a trailer or something like that.
That's scary.
But I think, I had track record there way back in the day, obviously, but in a 125, it was maybe 25 seconds, something like that.
Man.
Yeah, on a certain configuration, yeah.
Wow, yeah, because I'm thinking of the little corkscrew thing they got there. And I imagine that in a shifter would be insane.
Yeah, it's a little sketch.
There's one that I've talked about before at Reno as well. But that one's, you can go off there and there's dirt. It's not. I think if you were to mess it up at Prairie City again, there's not a whole hell of a lot of runoff. I want to say it's like brambles or something over there.
Exactly, because you make that quick right,
yeah,
and you're literally going at least 90 to maybe 120 degrees to the right, where Reno, it's a downhill. That's actually one of my favorite turns on a go-kart track. Yeah. You set up, get brake late apex, and just kind of run over that right-hand curb, and you're dead set for
And then like you say, it curls around. It's not it's not as like immediate. Right. It's like an S's section after it.
Doing the 125, you're established as a good track magic guy, and you're running against Memo and stuff. You mentioned you're coming down here and doing some of the IKF stuff, but how long were you guys thinking of staying in the shifter game? Where you guys, all right, this is going to be a 5-year deal?
Oh, you mean instead of like moving up to cars?
Yeah, and moving to cars.
Yeah. We always had it on, kind of the vision board as far as getting into cars. But, one of the things that we just started noticing was the money coming into karting at that time. I used to run with this kid named TJ Bell. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, but in Vegas, Bell Limousines, Bell Taxi Cabs, Whittlesea Taxi Cabs, they own it all.
Wow.
They were the huge, even in Reno, I think, too. And the family was based out of Reno. And they got hooked up with JM Racing, and I just kind of saw the money coming into it and really seeing that's what it's going to take in order to kind of get to the next level. So really, it was just about being good at shifter karts.
Yeah.
And at what point do you make that realization? How many years in are you?
That was probably at like 17.
Okay. Yeah. So pretty quick. Like you're learning all this stuff, you're paying attention, and you're like, okay. Cars may be a tough ask at this point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and especially where I wanted to go, because it was, eventually it'd be, IndyCar was something that, was on the radar for me. I had some people in my ear about it, just because I had done, I started to do well and started to win some races and stuff. And so it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, Chuck up at Speed and those places like that, they'd come out to the track and be like, oh, you're really good. Like, have you ever thought about doing this and that? And I was like, yeah, what's the budget for that? And they were like, $600,000. You're like,
right,
$600,000? Like, I'll just stick to my 125 stuff for the moment.
Well, and at this point too, you're starting to see guys around you move up into cars and stuff, and when they move up, you're like, all right, that family was pretty well off or had connections, so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Memo, it was a little bit more challenging, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention that because, Memo was, doing the F2000 deal. I think he was running like Van Diemen. And then I think he had just gotten his Toyota Atlantic test with Lynx Racing.
Oh, okay.
But, like his struggle in order to kind of find those rides and stuff. He was showing up to the track every single weekend, sleeping in his car, like, had his,
all
helmet
that
and gear in the back of his car, just, kind of waiting for that opportunity. Like, I love racing, but, that's not in the cards for me.
Yeah, that's similar to what Rob Niles had mentioned, where he had known about, things like Memo and whatnot, like the full-on sacrifice of trying to make it happen. And it's I mean, I want to. God, I don't think I got that in me, you know.
Exactly.
I can go start a life or try to force this life.
Yeah.
You know? And at one point, are you going to say, all right, maybe I don't need to do this anymore?
Well, and all at the same time, you were talking to, you're 17, kind of realizing this stuff, and it sounds like the college thing was always going to be in the cards. So
it absolutely was. Yeah.
So that's kind of like the timing is about right. You come to the realization that school's a thing. That's probably not going to be a deal. So I'll just be all in on the shifter cart deal.
Yeah, and I think the other thing was, I had started moving out of the regional stuff and more into the, traveling into the national programs. And so it was kind of like, I just want to be good at this, one thing that seemingly I was pretty good at. Again, we never tested. I didn't get to take time off of school in the middle of the week to go out to the track in order to find 210s. Like that was not a thing. Like I was pre-med from the time I was 15 years old. Like that was the trajectory. Like I was going to be a pediatric doctor and, in my parents' mind, I was like, this is going to fund my racing. But so it was always in the cards that I was going to go to college. So yeah, we would just show up at the track and, just be fast. And again, this was all with a Suzuki, which, the Honda guys, they were doing a lot of stuff and like stuffing their power valves, and then Mike Speed started working on some ignition timing and, mapping and stuff. We didn't have that. We just basically went out there and drove as fast as we could for as long as we could and, did fairly decently for what we had.
That actually reminds me of the question earlier we ended up skipping over, but when do we get those actual proper shift levers?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I raced with Track Magic for that first year and like halfway through the second year. And then I ended up going up to Reno and Alex Barron and Bobby Orgel from JM Racing ended up showing up at this race. And it was like a club race, and I was like, why are these guys here? Yeah. But lo and behold, I figured out that, they were there to impress TJ Bell and his family and kind of get that deal going in order to get, an influx of cash. But back then, Alex Barron and Bobby Orgel, these guys were like rock stars. When they show up to the track, like nobody had a box van. You kind of went there with like, an Okie trailer, or like out of the back of your truck, right? Yeah. These guys had full painted box vans, engines on the shelf, the whole deal. So have you guys ever seen that movie Rad, the 80s movie about bicycle
the BMX
racing?
Movie or
BMX,
whatever? Yeah.
So it was basically, this cheesy movie and like, I don't know, in the first 20 minutes or something, the hot team comes in and it's Bart Connors, who was like an Olympian from way back in the day. He shows up and he's this hot dude, got, the hot girl on his arm and all that stuff. That was Alex and Bobby.
Oh, okay. But catches everyone's eyes, all those eyes when they walk in though, with the setup and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, good looking dudes, fresh suits, painted helmets, the carts were on point, just looked nice. And of course me, I was like, and Track Magic was great. And, we actually ended up that weekend, I set track record, ended up, setting it on pole. And so
with this 2-bit Suzuki
with
the
Suzuki,
hell?
exactly.
What's going on over here?
And so
you
all the
can't
jam
beat
guys
these
are like, what's going on? So then they wanted volume tests on the cylinders. They wanted the lower end pulled apart, and it was kind of, because they had never heard of me.
Sure.
I was just doing this regional thing, but I had, raced enough at Reno to kind of know the quicker way around the track. So, I ended up, and all the Track Magic people were around. Mamo wasn't racing there, obviously, but the whole group, was kind of super receptive. So that next week, Fausto wanted to have a call, right, and talk about sponsorship and go back in time about 6 months. My cousin who owned the Suzuki dealership got really excited about shifter carts. And he started buying shifter carts, straight from Track Magic, bringing them into Ohio. And so I think within 6 months, he sold like 50 of these things.
Holy shnikes.
Yeah. So I think the only other kind of big name there was MRP with Birel. And they were distributed through 3S Go-Karts out of Toronto, who I ended up racing for later. But So anyway, had a big call with Fausto, and obviously he knew who my cousin was and was selling all this product. I mean, they were moving probably 3-4 times the product that any dealer, out here was moving. And so, and I remember because it was this whole thing, he was going to call 4:00 on a Wednesday. He had to call my high school, and somebody had to come and get me and, have this call, right? So I get on the phone with him and he goes, yeah, I heard you did really well at Reno. And I said, yeah, super excited, pumped, whatever. And he said, all right, well, we'd like to bring you on, as a Track Magic factory driver. And I go, great, absolutely. I go, well, what do I get with that? And he goes, well, we'll get you a suit. I go, okay. And he goes, we'll give you a budget of $500 for tires.
Per event or total?
For the year.
Oh, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Spared no expense.
But you get a suit.
Yeah, I get a suit. Yeah.
And the suits everybody knows they were woven in gold.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's how they got the color.
Yeah.
Wow,
So,
okay.
Yeah, so went home, told my dad, called my cousin, and he said, that's great, we're going Birel racing.
So do you think you would have been kind of the stepchild of the Track Magic group if you had taken that deal? Like, there's the tent, and then there's John off to the side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's funny because it's the one thing that has probably been the detriment to my racing career is I've never kind of been that guy who, wants to be under the tent and, wants to kind of play the game, if you will. Mm-hmm. And again, this is all probably stemming from the quarter midget days. It's like, I was just never that kid. My dad was never that guy. He's very much like, this is what we're doing. I mean, I can remember we've actually visited Emic when we were deciding between Track Magic and Emic because, they were based out of Sacramento and we went up to kind of take a tour and my dad told him, hey, he wants to go shifter kart racing. And they're like, no. He needs to start off in this kind of 100cc stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Already a hard no out of the gate.
Yeah. And it's funny because Vince Paleo was MX 125 driver. And I think Vince actually works with Rainey now and he does a lot of their, modifications and stuff. And again, he was another one of these icons where I think he had won like a couple Duffies. He had the, what was it, yellow plate or black plate, whatever.
Yellow, black or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And so, but it was one of those things where we were just never on that trajectory. It wasn't kind of graduate through the team. It was like, we're here and we're ready, give us the opportunity. But again, a lot of people, like you to do that, kind of up through the ranks and ultimately it comes down to money, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we want you to spend some money in order to get to that point.
Right.
And we just never did. So
were you guys able to make a lot of that happen on your own? I mean, obviously you had your cousin with the Suzuki dealership, and I'm sure you got some help from that, but were you trying to go find money, or were you guys able to kind of make all that happen for yourselves?
We were able to make it all happen ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes back to, just thinking about that deal here as you're talking about it, I'm like, sounds like an upside for them, because they're basically, you're on the Track Magic cart already, but you're not wearing a Track Magic suit. It's not full-on Track Magic stuff. So, okay, you get some tires and you get a suit, but it's still all the same shit that you already had, right? They weren't going to do anything extra, really.
Absolutely.
But they were going to benefit from, aside just the go-kart, the suit, the whole bit. Like, okay, Track Magic is winning, not just the Track Magic cart. Benefit for them, that makes sense. And now, aside from just the lack of extras, you say you're going to go MR or you're going to go Birel racing.
Yeah, because as soon as I, ended up explaining the conversation to my cousin, and it's funny because Track Magic wanted to become the Suzuki team.
Oh.
Because my cousin had the link to Suzuki's amateur motocross team because he ran a motocross team back east.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so he had the end with Americans, or what's their junior formula? MX team. It's like American Suzuki, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It'd basically be what Team Green is, but it was Suzuki's version of it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then Track Magic wanted to link to all the engines and everything. And then that was just kind of, okay, we're done with that. We're going to move on. So long story short, get into the Birel, and that's when it became the proper, shift lever, bump lever, I think they called it back then. But it's
that just became a thing, like, hey, I think we can go this direction, or Because people got tired of the butterflies?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Well, we saw what Tony Kart and JM Racing were doing and how they were able to last a race where, I was dying by the end of the race.
So
So it was kind of
okay.
like, we need to figure out, like...
So the butterfly, and you kind of actually, you said that out of the gate that, the American version or whatever was the butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you going against Tony Karts, et cetera, this entire time, and you've seen that they've got this deal? That's
Yep.
just not what you drive?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So, and it's interesting because when the JM guys would show up, they would always have some new product or something on their go-kart that you were wondering, like, all right, well, what's this? Like, the big exhaust can or silencer on the back of the ICC stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They were running that with basically a motocross pipe, and then they would have about a 2-foot stinger that had a bend in it and basically would go in. And so we would show up and they would have this thing. Well, it's because they were running an ICC, silencer and doing a lot of testing and stuff, which we weren't doing. We were just basically like, let's just run the motocross pipe as it is.
Yeah.
As we started seeing that, we're like, there's a lot more to this than just showing up and
You were just bolt and go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it was to the point where we didn't realize that we needed a J-arm for a motocross engine. So I was actually shifting backwards. So when we got to the bump shifter, I would basically push forward in order to upshift and pull back in order to downshift. Well, you can imagine going in to a turn, all of your, inertia
now you're trying
is
to
going
pull back.
forward and you're pulling back.
Yeah.
And I actually think Jason LaPointe actually shifted in reverse as well, even though he knew what the J-arm was, obviously. I think he preferred it that way. So I think he did a reverse shift.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you said you did the Birel team, the Birel manufacturer, but was that a team deal? Somebody that you switched over to another team, or was that JM?
No, Birel was 3S go-karts out of Toronto. So that was in Enzo Chiaviti.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you end up, Toronto, for those of you playing the at-home game, not close to California. So how does that work out? How do you end up doing that?
Yeah, so I got invited back for the Elkhart Grand Prix.
Okay.
The street race in Elkhart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I ended up just putting together a go-kart there, and it ended up that I think MRP was distributing for the United States, and then my cousin at FNS, he ended up just becoming a dealer for them.
Okay, so that's how the Birel thing kind of starts.
Exactly.
Right? So, because I was like, you go from having this this offer from Track Magic, you're on Track Magic, etc., to not doing Track Magic anymore. Okay,
well, we're an Italian family, so as soon as you piss us off, that's it. We're on to the next thing.
The line is drawn through it at that point. Gotcha. And, Birel, obviously, it kind of goes well because we're talking about Italian manufacturer, that kind of thing. So your cousin switches over from Track Magic to, after selling a boatload of Track Magics, switches over to Birel, and not as in addition to, but an exclusive
That's correct.
Birel deal.
Yeah.
And that's back in, you say, Ohio?
Yes, back in Ohio.
So, you decided you had an invitation. Are you doing any out of state traveling for this stuff? Are you doing promoto tour at all or like that when you're 17-ish doing Track Magic? Because you said you did Reno and whatnot.
Yeah, so I think that was 1994. So there wasn't a promoto tour.
Not yet. Okay.
Actually, I did. So after Elkhart, I ended up flying back to do a race, and it was a SKUSA race. It was owned by Don Janowski at the time. He was running it, and I don't even think Murley was part of it. This was even before that. And it was a race in the park. It wasn't Quincy, but it was another one that they had set up.
Right.
So I ended up flying back for that race, and I did fairly well. I think I outqualified the second guy by 1.3 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so
had you done much street racing, or was that the first time?
No, Elkhart was the first one, and then this was the second one.
Okay.
But Elkhart was just basically kind of like a L-shaped, downtown type of thing. So there wasn't much
wasn't very technical or anything.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, when they set up a chicane, they would basically put hay bales as the chicane. And then, I don't know who thought of this brilliant plan, but they put sheets of styrofoam in front of it in order to do advertisements. But what ended up happening was we were just like, oh, well, we can just blow out the hay bale by kind of driving through it each time, and thus blowing out the styrofoam, which is putting styrofoam and hay on a track that you're doing 90 miles an hour. Yeah. So basically we're just driving straight and turning left.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
But no, this one was a park race, so it was very, twisty and everything. And they ended up putting plywood sheets of plywood along the track and along the curbs and along the trees. And I'm leading the race by, 10 seconds or something. And I go to go around a lapper, and he ends up moving on me, and I put the thing right into a tree.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Twist the go-kart, the whole thing's, it was probably like, I don't know, at the time, $4,000 or $5,000 go-kart, just done.
Oh, how were you feeling after that?
You know what? I didn't get hurt, but I was really pissed.
Yeah,
was,
I would think.
I think it was like $5,000 to win, which was a lot of money back then.
Right.
Yeah, instead it cost you $5,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And actually, how did you get those opportunities? So you moved to the Birel deal. And I assume, are you buying it from your cousin at that point, or how did that whole deal happen, and where are these opportunities come from?
No, it's basically win on Sunday, sell on Monday, and sell all of these things. So honestly, like, we went through a couple of different, we were testing stuff. So we had a JM, we had a gold cart, for a little bit, all testing these things. So it was one of those things where, there wasn't a ton of money in go-karting at the time, but yet we were showing up with these new chassis. So we, started to become the villains a little bit at the track. And it was kind of like, oh, who's this kid who just started?
Yeah.
And now he's getting chassis flown in and all this. And it's kind of like, yeah, but they also didn't know kind of where we wanted to go. And that there was a sales side because California was so disconnected from, Ohio and what they're seeing.
Right.
But when they would fly me in, like, they would sell, 20 chassis because shifters weren't big there. And so as I was flying out and doing it, they were selling a ton of chassis based on this.
Okay, so basically, you're flying on your cousin's dime, or is this all connected to? Is it? How would you say what was Toronto
through 3S?
3S.
No. So we were basically, my dad was funding the racing career. My cousin was funding the engines and chassis. He was just selling for 3S, who was the importer. But then cut to later on, I ended up running directly for 3S.
Okay, so when you're doing these couple of races, it's kind of like, I'm going to go do these races because it's going to help sell go-karts. And also because you want to go win shit.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So it all kind of plays nice. And you're still racing on this coast as well?
Yep, still racing here. I started... There started to be a little bit of a shift because then Formula C, which was the rotary valve 125 stuff, started coming in. So I started playing with that. And IKF was... because SKUSA was just kind of starting out and the shifter cart thing was starting to happen, and IKF wasn't really supporting it. Like, I don't even think you could go to the IKF Grands and run it from what I remember.
Okay.
And again, that could be wrong and I apologize. But so I was basically kind of working on the Formula C stuff while going back east and running some of these, early pro moto races, if you will.
Well, and for you to say that, you're able to sell these chassis to these new people. I think was it 70% people that haven't been exposed to shifters yet, and 30% you're winning, so they wanted that go-kart,
I think so. He had a lot of walk-in business to his dealership, which you don't have now, but I think because a lot of these guys, I think Billy Musgrave has said it, it's like a lot of the ex-motocross guys, because they've either gotten hurt or aged out, don't have anything to go to, and once they see a shifter cart and they're like, I know that engine, it's just a go-kart, it should be easy, right? And then they go out and, it's fun for a little bit, and then as you try and gain time, we didn't have microns on our steering wheel, so you went out and drove and kind of felt the thing, but then you had to come back in and go, all right, Dad, what my 15 lap times? And now I got to think back. Oh, what did I do on that lap to gain those 2:10s?
Right.
So,
and now it's just check on the computer. It'll tell you what you did.
exactly.
Yeah,
The
crazy.
GPS or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Man.
Were you on a bit of a Birel island over here, or were there other people on the Birels in California at the time?
From what I remember, I think I was one of one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So there was no tuning help. There was no nothing. It was
certainly in the shifter game.
Exactly.
Because there's other stuff probably. There's Birels and whatnot happening probably in the single speed stuff, right, at that time?
I don't think so. I think
Really?
it was still kind of that Track Magic Emic, and then Invader out of San Jose was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just kind of like there were no foreign chassis in Northern California from what I can remember.
Gotcha.
There was an MBA chassis, I think, from years and years ago that was kind of one of the first ones in. But other than that, no, it was like JM down here, and then the only other one that I could think were the Valiantes up in Vancouver.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, and
with
if
their
you bring
chassis.
in a new chassis like that, you got to be able to hit the ground running. And it sounds like Birel was able to do just that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to sell enough chassis in order to support it. It's just like today, right? It's
Yeah.
like, when the new thing comes in. But, there were a lot of tried and true, people in that kind of Emic Track Magic Invader thing that just weren't willing to look outside of it because they'd always been fast on it, right? So
Right.
it's like what you don't know, you're kind of like, I'm not going to try that. Let's see when somebody starts winning. So, and I think that's when JM started coming into Northern California, that they started selling some of those chassis because I think like Speed got on them pretty early and had
Okay.
some good success. And then the whole shift happened.
Yeah.
Who are some of the cats that are running around at this point now?
At that point,
Around 18 or so.
I think, God, I don't even remember who I mean, it was still kind of, JM. I don't remember if Giebler had started running with us yet because Giebler was over in Europe from what I remember, and he was running more of that Formula A. And I think Alex and Bobby were doing the Lynx deal for Atlantics, but still racing for Jean. So
Okay.
it was kind of like this middle ground, but before it started to shift into when, Scott started getting in there, AJ started getting in there
Yeah.
because they were all younger than I was.
And this
Okay.
is in the mid-ish.
Mid-90s.
Yeah. So you're approaching 18 here, and you're doing the shifter deal. Well, college was going to be a thing.
Yep.
So did you go to college straight out of high school
Yes.
and continue to race?
Yeah, continued both. But again, my dad being who he is, it's not like I got to, leave on a Tuesday. Like SuperNats, like those guys would be there all week long, at X-Blax. Like that did not happen for me. I flew in on a Thursday night, had one practice, and then you go and run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And,
Where'd you go to college at?
UC Davis?
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're just talking about SuperNats right there. So, and I always friggin' forget what year SuperNats started. I know it was in the late 90s, right?
I think it's like 90, I want to say like 97 somewhere, but there was actually a SuperNats before there was a SuperNats.
Oh, yeah?
Right.
Yeah. So back in, I think it was like 94, 95, out at Phoenix, they ended up having a shifter. I think it might have been shifter only, kind of SuperNats, if you will. It was in October. And so it was me, Mamo, Mike Speed, Darren Elliott was running then, Jesse Rourke was running, the motorcycle builder now, and just a bunch of other, Buddy Rice I raced against there. So yeah, it was kind of like the SuperNats before SuperNats.
And that was, you said, 90,
I want to say it was like 94, 95.
right in there.
Yeah.
And then, and like you said, you're showing up late, you're not getting the practice. But this is at proper tracks. We're not doing street course, or excuse me, temporary courses at this point. We're actually going to an actual track and doing it.
Yeah, so I think at this point we had just got into the Formula C and that became a thing. And yeah, so it was to the point where the first race of the year, and I don't remember if it was North American Championships or it was like a WK Manufacturers thing or Constructors Cup, but we ended up showing up at a race. We had ordered a Birel. 3S came down with it, had an entire team there. We were going to be running with them for the weekend. And we show up, I think it was either Thursday morning. Yeah, it was Friday morning. And the go-kart's in a box.
Oh, wow.
How convenient.
Yeah. Practice is that afternoon.
Yeah.
So my dad and I just basically hustled as much as we could, put the go-kart together, and I think I ended up getting one practice. The team was on Dunlop tires. I had never run Dunlop tires, didn't know anything about them. We had always run Bridgestones. And so we went out, ended up like a second slower or something than the fastest guy. So that next morning we made a decision, we're going to break from the team. We're going to go to Bridgestones. And we did, and ended up having one practice on the Bridgestones and ended up setting track record.
Oh, wow.
Off of a go-kart that we built out of the box. Now, at SuperNats, you can do that, but probably because you've been running that go-kart for an entire year, that brand of go-kart, we did not do that. Like, we showed up, I think... Alex Barron had the track record. We ended up breaking that, and then I think I was first, and Darren Elliott was second, so we were on the front row.
And the team was stoked.
Yeah.
Let's just say I did not. I was not under the easy up for the entire weekend in the Phoenix Sun.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you set track record. You're at the sharp end. You end up winning.
I think I got second. Yeah, I think I ended up getting second. Yeah, it's, didn't know the chassis that well, couldn't tune it. And, back then, that's when axles were just coming into play. And so you'd have like 2 or 3 axles. And Birel, they used to never mark their axles. So the only way you'd know what you're running is if you looked at the different paint color inside of the axle. So you had a pink, a green, and maybe an orange or something.
Yeah, there's they're marked on the VLR, the 4 strokes that we used to run. But they're also painted on the inside.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the green one is a medium, and there's a white and a red.
Yeah,
that's right.
But they're painted on the inside as well as it's anodized. I'm not sure how they. That's not anodized. It's laser etched, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, that's so you're going out there and you're just making all these fantastic life decisions with these different teams and whatnot.
But just piss everybody off.
But obviously, you weren't wrong with the tire switch.
Yeah. And they had a park for May situation at the time. So if they could have changed their tires, they would. But because they had already declared, they couldn't. Yeah. So
you did yourself a favor showing up Thursday.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jeez, it's all part of the plan.
Late entry, And also respraying the inside of the axles. We got hip to that. So the next race, the pink one was no longer pink. The pink one was green. And the orange one is now blue. And
Wow.
Yeah. So then
what are these special axles John has?
Well, everybody's looking at your stuff going, oh, which one are you running? Oh, we're running the pink. Oh, okay, we're going to throw the pink in. 5/10 off.
Yeah, because it ain't pink.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Little things to try to keep
Guys,
keep the
that
secrets.
looks more salmon. I don't think that's pink.
These off color.
John's like, shit, they're figuring it out.
So you're doing this race. You're going to college. You're still doing all this other kind of stuff, but every single time you show up to the races, you're still at the sharp end. It sounds like through the entire deal.
Yeah.
Or at least in the conversation.
Yeah. The thing is I'm really fast for a lap. The racecraft, not so much.
Oh.
Yeah. So and always been that way. It takes me a while because I don't practice, because I'm not showing up, and I think you had Billy Cleveland on, who would talk about they would go out to prep for a race and do like 150 laps. Like, I don't think I've done 150 laps to like prep for SuperNats. Like, I just don't do it.
Right.
Over the course of the year.
Over the course of the year. Exactly.
Yeah.
Not like on a Friday, but like for the last 11 months. Yeah.
Jeez Louise. So when you're going out there and doing it, you're just literally trying to do the big races, the big big stuff, SuperNats when it's available, that kind of deal. I happen to know that now you only do SuperNats.
Yes.
There's nothing else that you race, to your point about not doing 150 laps. And the joke say, of course, of the year, literally. Like, I don't know that I've seen you out here a whole hell of a lot this year, my friend.
Yeah, I think I came out a couple of weeks ago and maybe did 20 laps, and that's been the first time I've been out of kart in about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, so December's right around the corner.
Right. Yeah, he found it. The SuperNats moves the date. He's like, oh, one more practice day. I'll get another 20 laps in.
Yeah.
By the way, I was doing the math. I think that I've done, if I do this race this year, which obviously I am, I've done SuperNats in 4 different decades. And I'm only 44, by the way. But,
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been racing for 5 decades.
Wow.
Which blows my mind. I'm like, 81, Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, punk rock was in the time I started.
It'll come back.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
exactly. It all recycles, right?
Yeah.
When did you make the switch from racing hardcore all the time, traveling around doing again, pretty good deal here. I mean, with the cousin and the chassis and the engines and 3S and everything kind of having this going on. When do you make a switch from racing hardcore to this once a year stuff that you do?
I ended up, so I was pre-med for 3 years at Davis, and for some reason it just kind of wasn't it wasn't linking up with me. And so I thought, okay, well, what am I interested in? What are my interests? And I always knew the Hollywood thing was kind of in the back of my mind, but I was also like, I'm really interested in money. Bottom line, not greed, but just like how money works, how finance works, how real estate works, all that. So I ended up doing a couple classes, and a professor was kind of helping me out in the real estate, figuring out how real estate finance worked, and it super intrigued me. And so as soon as I got into economics, I was like full bore.
Okay.
And at that time, I had 3 years on the pre-med track. Now, in order to graduate, I got to go start all the way over.
Oh, man.
Because I need undergrad credits. I need all this stuff, right? So at that time, I was like, if I'm going to get out and, not do 7 years because I'm not a doctor, I need to figure this out really quickly and kind of, wrap this up.
Yeah, and you're 21-ish already at this time. Yeah.
Yeah. So end up taking between 5 to 7 classes a quarter,
Wow.
which, in the quarter system is pretty crazy because it's only 10 weeks.
Right.
And I was doing that for, I think, 9 straight quarters. So I'd go, all year round. I'd take as many classes as I
Catching
could.
up on everything. Yeah.
Catching up. Yeah, exactly.
Did you pull your hair out during that time, or did you feel like you were able to get through it pretty well? Just had to stay focused, obviously.
Yeah, it was a lot of focus. Once you learn the difference between like kind of economics on the macro level and get into it on the micro level, everything feeds itself. So finance really, like once you get microeconomics down, like finance works off of all that. It's all supply and demand, really.
Okay.
But now you're thinking about it in different terms. And then, obviously you have to take statistics and some of these other things. I was always really good at math. And so it definitely helped me accelerate to get through that program. But that was a 4-year program that I did in probably like 19 months, I think. Yeah.
Not a lot of time for racing.
Not a lot of time for racing.
No.
So that's where you kind of end up going down the I can't go racing all the time program. I gotta go all in on this school thing.
Well, and also I think at that time too, like fitness and some of the other things were starting to come to play in racing where, I could go out and just run whenever I wanted to and run as many laps. I mean, I used to run 80 shifter and 125 on a Saturday and probably do 8 races because we would do three heats in a main in each class. Like no problem.
Yeah.
Then when I got to that point, it was like, my fitness was suffering, mental acuity, all that stuff. And then I was looking at these guys who, were 15, 16 that were cleaning house. It was like again, like a Scott Speed and, but those guys were out there all the time and tinkering, and these were, I think Tom Kutcher calls them Hemi motors. Like that's when these 125s were putting out a lot of power.
Okay.
Like, you could smoke the tires.
So that time off, the industry changed a little bit, the motor package, all that stuff. But I mean, the influx of drivers that are now coming in, and you're like, if I get back in, I'm now keeping up with the young guns.
Exactly. And I'm just competitive by nature. So it's kind of like it's either all in or, I'm out. And you look at a guy like Michael Valiante, who's one of the best go-kart drivers I've ever seen. I mean, literally the guy sits in a go-kart, does not move, whether it's in a shifter or a Formula A. And it's like when you're going up against those guys who, I think their family has their own track or, access to a track. It's like for me to show up on a Friday and try and do well, and then I saw when I would show up at SuperNats, like my stuff was just suffering. It was just kind of like I was showing up just to kind of do it, but I was never going to be competitive.
Right.
So you're doing the SuperNats stuff still during this time, just doing that, or did you completely take a break from racing altogether?
Completely. So I started at my former company in 2000. I think I did SuperNats in 2000 and 2001, and then I shut it down from there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you were able to kind of do that kind of stuff a little bit, but you're realizing that it's just kind of, I need to focus on this other, now at that point, career stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And like at one point, like I think on like the Saturday of SuperNats, I ended up having to work, and we had a client thing happening, and so I didn't get to race in 2 of the races. So then I was all the way in the back, and
talk about putting a sour taste in your mouth.
Exactly.
Right there. Yeah. I'm going to come out here to do this to get effed.
Yeah, to spend all this money. And, at that time we were renting motors and chassis, and you weren't getting the best stuff. So it was just kind of like, all right, unless, it's the same as my business, unless I'm going to be able to do this at kind of the top level, I just don't want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I knew it took money and time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you do it all the time. You literally do that all the time.
Exactly.
And so why is that? Is it the same story these days where you don't have the time to come out here and run all the time and practice, etc., or is it one of those situations where you just said, no, I just really like this event, want to do that, that's how I keep my fix? Or what is the thought process to going from I absolutely don't want to do it that way to that's the only way you do it?
It's a mix of both, to be honest with you. Especially with what I do for a living, I, need to be accessible to my clients kind of 24/7. It's not, a random occurrence that, last night at 10 o'clock, like I'm doing a deal for a client who's supposed to fly out on Tuesday. So, having that knowledge of I need to be accessible to come out here and practice for 6-7 hours, it's just tough. Like the Wi-Fi isn't great, like I need access to a computer right away, something always happens. By the way, Cal Speed is my good luck charm.
Oh, is it?
Anytime I'm waiting for like good news, a test for a client, like some big deal coming through, I come to the go-kart track.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And my wife even knows that, like, I'll have a client, they were actually testing for an HBO Max series, and that's actually why it came out about a week and a half ago.
Right. Yeah.
They were testing for an HBO Max series, and so my wife said, "Going to the track?" I said, "Yep."
Yeah.
Load everything up and just come out here and wait.
Don't mind if I do.
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
it's my good luck charm, my lucky spot.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's a mix of that, and then the other thing is I do have some real estate investments, and that aren't in California that I kind of watch over and manage. So sometimes I need to fly out and do that. Sometimes I have a set visit. I have clients shooting in New York and Chicago and Vancouver. I need to go, make sure that they're taken care of. So it's a little bit of, I don't have the time to do it. And also SuperNats to me is just the pinnacle of go-karting. Sans going to Europe and kind of running in those tracks, like the fact that, a Michael Schumacher or, some of the Formula One guys, I think Sebastian Buemi came over, Alexander Rossi raced in one, Checo Perez raced in one.
The fact that these guys make the point to come do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're here to gamble. It's, not
yeah.
words, but they also race.
Right.
For me, it's going and running against those guys. I mean, the top in the world. And, a couple of years ago, I think it was at the Westgate or the Convention Center one, at that kind of really long track that they ran. I think it was like a minute-long track, which was, to me, the best track that they've ever put together. I think in the main, I ended up like 7 or 8 tenths off of DeConto, who like wiped the field.
Right.
I think he won by like 8 or 10 seconds, something like that. And against every other European that he normally races against in the World Championships, right? And that's my goal. My goal is to be within a second of those front guys in KZ.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of actually feeds right into one of my other questions. Is it's KZ that you run? It's Super Pro. It's the top tier deal. And
there's a running theme in my life as far as going to that just top class.
Yeah.
Like, screw it.
Yeah. S1 or Super S1. That's what I want, the Super S1. And at this point, again, things have changed. You're still competitive. You still want to do it, but now it's against yourself, essentially. You're doing it because it's the pinnacle. This is the measuring stick. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like you've got delusions of grandeur of going and winning the SuperNats.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But there's something, I've been doing it, I think. So the last race I did, SuperNats, was 2001. And then the next one that I did was 2011. Yeah, it must have been 2011 because I think Schumacher came in 2010.
Around there,
yeah. It was the year after Schumacher came. I went out to Vegas. I had heard he was going to be there, and I was like, I'm not missing this, right?
Right.
And so I watched it and hadn't really, I had a go-kart and I was toying around with it, but not really seen the competition level of SuperNats for a while, and ended up seeing that. So the next year I ended up entering, and the week before I shouldn't have practiced because ultimately I knew I'd get hurt, and damned if I didn't.
Right.
And get hurt up at tic-tac-toe up in Sonoma.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Figures it's gonna be that section of a track to get you right. I mean, I heard that's just such a
what the hell are you
hell
doing
of a section.
at tic-tac-toe, man? That's
Me like an
begging for
idiot.
it.
See, when I left in 2001, I never had a rib protector because those weren't a thing. You
Right.
basically just foam up the seat and you were good. And I was also 10 years younger. And, sure enough, I go through there, and on the tack, I guess it was, felt it. And it was really, really painful. And so I was like, you know what, let's just go to SuperNats and try it. And within a practice, I knew, this ain't going to work. I mean, I was holding my, ribs in as tight as I could, and, just really not driving. And I think Jimmy McNeil, he was racing in that class. I raced G1 that year because I was like, let's just, I saw what KZ was. I'm not fit enough to do that. So I'll get a KZ, but I'll just race in the G1. And I think, at the end of the first day or something, I was like 9/10 off. I was like, this isn't worth it. Like, I'm not going to put myself through it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but
Was it going to get any better?
it wasn't going to
Right.
get any better. Yeah. It was only going to get more painful. And I can remember just being back in tears in the soaking in the bathtub, just being like, come on, let's make it, and then it was like, no, it's not happening. But then, like an idiot, I go, next year we're going to come back stronger and race KZ. So that's what I did.
And you've been doing that pretty much all the way through, right?
Yeah, I 2011, and I've done it every single year since COVID in 2020. But and then the last race in 2019, I ended up making a really poor decision and deciding I'm going to go KZ racing and 175 racing.
That's right. Yeah. You're doing both. You had to make up for those laps that you missed out all year. Then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my money's worth.
Yeah.
So
it's only an extra $25 to run 2 classes, so why not?
It's not like
it's not Tri-C?
Or
Okay.
1,200.
Yeah.
Oh, and we haven't talked about tires yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the good news. You only need the one hotel room.
That's right.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So you end up, for the last decade or so, thereabouts, hitting all the SuperNats all the way through. You talk about doing 2 classes there. Again, what is well, I'll back up a little bit. You don't come out and practice. It's not a thing.
Right.
How do you do, shifters aren't just a walk in the park to drive.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to try to prepare and stay in shape for that?
A lot of gym time, as much as I can. I pretty much, for that race, will probably drop around 15 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I probably won't need to this year because I'm going to do the 175 Masters, G1, whatever they call that now.
Yeah.
They change it so often, I don't know. The number panels and all that.
Yeah.
A lot of gym time, a lot of core, that type of stuff.
So if you're not going to be in the seat, you're still going to at least make sure your body's ready for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when you do come out here and you do start cutting laps, you can kind of gauge yourself. All right, where am I at in my preparation for the SuperNats? You're like, I'm going to need to grab a few more days, or
exactly, yeah. And when I come out to start, it's normally sometime in like late October, which is probably pretty crazy. But if I'm like within a second of Billy, I'm good. Like,
right.
I'm feeling pretty good. Like, it seems like, all right, I know there's a half a second, one in my fitness, and then just like starting to tune and dial on the go-kart, and do that stuff. But in 2019, I ended up, right before the race, ended up ordering a chassis that I had never driven before. And then the 175, which I had never driven before.
Yeah.
Chassis shows up 4 days before SuperNats. I come out here on that Wednesday just to break in the engine and actually drive the go-kart for the first time. And then I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do this.
Unbelievable.
It's only money, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So when you're doing that preparation and whatnot, and one of the things I want to ask you now is you're not doing KZ, right?
Yes.
You're doing 175, and to your point, the Masters side of things, which is the first time that you've done that since the first time you went back.
Yeah.
Why the switch now from doing the top tier deal, Super Pro or KZ or what have you, to doing the 175 in the Masters category?
It's funny. So I was originally in 2019 supposed to run S2 because they wouldn't give me a license for the S1 thing, just because I'd run KZ, but I don't run, the Pro Moto Tour and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's just kind of like, okay, we'll license you on a B license in order to run KZ. And so they set me up for S2, but S2 ended up raining out both mornings. What did that be? Wednesday and Thursday morning of SuperNats 2019. Well, I had no time in the go-kart. I never, I came out here to break in the motor, probably did like 20 laps, and then I showed up.
What chassis were you on at that time?
That was on a Croc.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I was on a Croc in 175, and I was on a Formula K
I was
in
going to
KZ.
ask, yeah.
And that made it really interesting. So here's what I did. I ended up pitting with Greg Bell at Leading Edge for KZ and Billy for the Croc deal. So I was running between two.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So it rained out on that Wednesday. And so I ran up to Patty, Tom's wife, who's running the front desk. And I said, hey, can I switch to G1? And she's like, well, why do you want to switch? I go, well, I've never driven the chassis and it's not going to rain in the afternoon. So I'll just bolt on a bunch of weight and run in the afternoon. Well, the problem is that once G1 and KZ were only separated by one class.
Oof.
All practice and races. So it was the look on Rob Logan's face when I was running from my KZ at the scales to make it to the 175 to go out and do practice that I was like, yeah, this is probably not a good idea.
You only had to do that once to realize it was a bad idea.
By the way, I hadn't driven all year long.
No.
Fitness probably wasn't where it needed to be. Yeah. And he was just like, man, I don't know how you're doing it.
All your energy was running from one end to the other.
Pretty much, yeah.
Man.
Because the other thing is, my father, he doesn't do this all year long. So lifting a go-kart up and down and so.
Oh, he's there with you doing that. Okay.
Yeah. So my dad comes every year, fly him in, and that's actually one of the reasons why we do
That's
the race.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is hanging with dad, and he loves it. But so. Basically, before that race, I ended up getting a one-man cart stand, which is not an electric or hydraulic cart stand. It's basically this thing where you got to pick up the front bumper, put it at about a 45-degree angle, and then shove the cart stand underneath and drop it down. Well, G1, I think, is 415 pounds. So I got to bolt 25 pounds on the go-kart and then pick it up after the scales, after practice, slam it down, and then run to my other go-kart. I was pretty tired.
Man.
Yeah.
Did you complete all the laps?
I did not.
Okay.
I saw what the times were in KZ, and I was like, after the second heat race, I was like, you know what, this isn't, I did it for that long until Friday night, and then I was like, I ended up qualifying 6th in G1, ended up running as high as 4th in that class. So I was like, I'm just going to focus all my energy and go this direction.
So you may not be doing the, quote, highest possible level, but actually you're at the pinnacle, the top level for Masters still.
Yes.
Are we starting to get the competitive juices going a little bit like, hey, podium actually, instead of just, I'm going to try and stay within a second. It's like, no, I could actually go do something.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely, because Thursday night after we had qualified, and I didn't even know, like when I was on track, I was basically just trying to go as fast as I could. Like, so in KZ, because all these guys are waiting to the last 3 minutes, they're basically wanting all of us to go out there and clean the track off for them, right? Get it nice and hot, and then they're going to go out and do it.
Right.
Well, as soon as they come in that kind of third, fourth minute, you're not going to get any laps because they're basically scrubbing tires and they don't care if they're in your way, right?
Right.
So you go out first and just blitz the track as fast as you can go. Well, I did the same thing in G1 because I didn't know, kind of comparatively where I was to those guys. So I'm like, I'm just going to go out and blitz the track, go as fast as I can, which is stupid. You should never do that. But, go out, warm your tires, do all that stuff. And I was like, no, I'm just going to go do it. And then I ended up qualifying 6th. I think it was about 4/10 off of pole. And I was like, wow, it's, pretty decent for never having run in the thing. And I think either John Crow was right in front of me or right behind me. And I was like, well, this is a dude who races every single weekend. Like, So Thursday night, I'm starting to think, podium, all right. Like, I've never, had that opportunity at SuperNats. It's always been like, if I could get within top 15 in KZ, I'm like golden.
Right.
This is my vacation every single year. I do, SuperNats, and then I either go to, like Vale or Aspen or Whistler and go to, a week at the spa and, recoup and relax and stuff like that. Like, that's my deal.
Right. Yeah. Right. But now
I've got a chance.
Yeah. And you don't have this little other hindrance called KZ going at the same time.
Yeah.
Has that changed your thought process and your preparation for the year? I mean, we're August now.
Yeah.
Almost August. This will be out. But you were just here in July. It's not
I
October.
Know. Yeah,
I mean, maybe you just need more deals that need to have good luck charms.
Yeah, it was funny because I came out here and was tuning for one of Ron White's drivers back in, I think it was February. They did the California challenge.
Yeah. Okay.
And it started to some started to churn, and I started getting a little bit competitive. And by the way, I'm actually far better mechanic than I ever was a driver over the course of a weekend.
You're a pretty decent driver, so...
I actually used to wrench for Ron.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So in my time off, I actually would go out and do races with him. And, that is one intense guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Like the most intense shifter kart driver I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Yeah. And even with his drivers on his team, like... if you're screwing up, he's going to let you know in like the worst way possible. Yeah. There's going to be some hurt feelings by the end of the weekend, but he's going to make you faster.
Have you already put your plans together for what you're going to do this year? For what chassis you're going to, because I didn't see what you're on. So
so I started getting the itch, and then by happenstance, I ended up coming into a GFC kart.
Okay.
And then I ended up George Tavares. I guess he's the IAME guy. He ended up having a used engine that I ended up doing a deal on. So I put that together, and yes, that's the goal, is to, start getting out here and actually doing it a little bit more, because I feel like by the end of that weekend, we had a brake issue where the rear was, the pistons weren't retracting. And so by the end of the race, I mean, you could barely spin the axle.
Oh, wow.
This is back in 2019?
This is in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up Saturday night, we did a caliper swap. Billy just happened to have an old caliper, which was a different design, and we stuck it on there. And Sunday, I was within like a half a tenth of Musser.
Oh,
and
come
I was
on.
like,
Nice.
if I'm within a half a tenth of him,
right,
I'm not putting in any work, like... The next time, and I thought it was going to be in 2020, I'm putting in the work.
Right.
Right.
It's no expense at this point in order to try and get to the front.
Yeah.
So you already here in July. Everybody needs to watch out for old John Baldasare. Come on.
Yeah.
You know what would be, I don't know if ironic would be the right word, but if you have that GFC badge as a track magic.
I was thinking
That'd
about
be
full
cool,
circle
man.
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I just
awesome.
got lucky to get this chassis, but I'm definitely thinking about it. Just go back to the roots. I mean,
That'd be cool, huh?
That'd be so
And I
neat.
love the fact that Gary picked it up. I know that they had something, in between where somebody bought it and was trying to do something. But, I mean, for me, Gary actually had just started driving when I got out for Track Magic, and just to see what he accomplished in that chassis and, the story, how close he was to Fausto and, all that stuff. It was so cool when I saw those photos, and Jason LaPointe's in it. I think
right.
he's got something to do with it. And then I think Howie's doing the sticker kit for it. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And maybe I'll get that suit that, Fausto promised me all those years ago.
Oh, that'd be awesome. It'd be cool to see like a picture of you back in the day in the Track Magic.
Yeah, I
and
definitely
then
got
one,
floating around.
and then one brand
Current
new.
one.
That'd be
side by side.
That's
Yeah.
gotta happen. That'd be
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah.
That'd be awesome. So you're getting ready to go do SuperNats this year, and we're not effing around. We're getting after it. We're gonna try to do it. What are you doing different for the prep? I mean, aside from showing up in July instead of October.
Right. I think it's obviously going to be a lot of fitness, a lot of work with the chassis. I think it's changing the focus, if you will. My focus before is my vacation. This is time that I enjoy with my dad. He always flies in. My wife and her family fly in on Friday night. She basically comes to the track for my race and then leaves. She loves me enough to know to leave me alone.
Right.
Because while I say it's fun and vacation, it gets pretty intense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Basically from, Wednesday's great, Thursday's okay, Friday's abysmal, Saturday's getting a little better, and Sunday like sucks me back in to come back next year.
Right.
It's like Friday I'm like, I'm over and I'm never doing it again.
Yeah.
And then like Saturday I see that kind of glint and I was like, oh, okay, I could do this again. Yeah. So I think it's that. I think it's a lot of fitness, and really it's going to be getting on the Micron. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn, and I think the telemetry is a huge thing, and especially because I only do it once a year, it's like I need that quick hit in order to figure out oh, this is what's changed, this is what I need to do. I've always been really good at adapting to a chassis. I never like to sit there and throw axles and tune and all that stuff. So I think that's where the telemetry is going to help me kind of get that prep.
Get more of the driver out of you. Yeah, for sure.
And then I may do a race or two in order to.
You want to run that by me again? Holy shnikes.
Well, and the thing that I'm figuring is, I can come out here and pound laps, so the problem is track changes so much. You get a little dust coming in, a little wind, this and that, and it's like, you can come out and pound laps, but at the same time, you need to see how the chassis is going to change.
I got good news for you.
Rubber's down.
I got really good news for you, and maybe I'll just help you with this plan. SKUSA Pro Kart Challenge has their finale here in October.
Do they really?
Yeah.
In October.
I was just about to say that.
What layout? Are they going to do Grande?
No. I want to say it's Technico.
Interesting.
Well, busy.
That's like our SuperNats
right
track.
Up, right up your old
That'd be
school
good.
alley
Yeah.
right there. Let me actually, while we're here, I'll look it up. For the top, because it's the first weekend of October, I believe. Nope, it's Classico Counter, not Technico.
Okay.
So it's going to counterclockwise. So you have the S's in the first set, and then you'll go back through all the back straight into the hairpin, and then back up the hill.
Coming into the S's?
Yeah,
down the
hill.
down the
That's
hill
gonna be
into
fun.
the S.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that section's fun. Down the hill, that section's a ton of fun going backwards.
Yeah, but it's busy. But where I'm going with that is that if there's any chance of you getting a chance to, within relative close proximity, and if there's going to be anybody here, that would be what I would do. I would go out there
I was about
for
to say,
the Pro Kart finale, October 2nd, 3rd.
Well, you heard it here first. Yeah. I'm going to do it.
All right.
You sold me.
Nice.
I love it. I got to tell you, looking back, I said it off air before, it was one of those things where I've seen you out here all these years, and it was always oh, hey, John must be getting ready for SuperNats, because it's always towards
that
the
time
fall.
of year. Yep.
Right.
Good to see you, John. Good to see you. Won't see you for another half a year after this. But I had no idea the background, and with the quarter midgets, and then ingrained at the early days of shifter kart racing.
Yeah.
And you weren't just this nut that does SuperNats all the time. You're actually, I don't know, pretty damn good. And you always were fast out here. But I was always like, why in the hell would you only do the one race every year? Makes a hell of a lot more sense now, my man.
Yeah, no, I got really lucky, and a family that supported me when I was super, super young, and I'm so honored to be part of the karting community, and I think that's why I love it so much. Is, I come out here and I see Howie and Dane, and those guys, in it week in and week out, and, you know, follow them on Instagram. And, you know, I'm sure there's other father-sons, you know, Billy and Willie, you know, who come out and do it. And, you know, that's a glimpse into my past, and that's what me and my father did. And so when I see that, you know, I don't have any kids, and the only reason why I'd ever have a kid is to have a race car driver. My wife said no. But yeah, no, it's just, you know, I just love it. You know, I've come to the point in my life where if I wanted to do cars, I could, you know, I could spend the money and go and do that. But there is nothing like the feeling of showing up at SuperNats and seeing, you know, the rigs pull in, the tents go up, the new carts coming out of the box, you know, there's just this buzz, and people are so excited to, you know, be in the parking lot of the Rio, this dilapidated, you know, kind of, you know, stuff peeling off of the side of the, you know, hotel and stuff like that, that I can actually remember was, I think, just built during my first SuperNats. I showed up to Vegas and saw this new hotel
that was going up,
the Rio that was going up. And now, you know, what, 20 some years later, and
it's still the premier place.
Exactly. Still, you know, racing in that parking lot, watching the train go by, you know.
That's so
like,
cool.
It's kind of my version, you know, of kind of what the pinnacle of karting is. Not to say, you know, that the Rock the Rio program isn't. It's just, you know, what I've done and what I've known.
This has been your history. Yeah, exactly.
And it's the people that, you know, I've known throughout the years. It's like to go there and see, you know, a Greg Bell or a Ron White, you know, Memo came a couple of years ago, Phil Giebler, who, you know, I remember watching at Xplex 25 years ago, you know, in a Formula A kart and then in a shifter kart. Like, you know, it's just a touchstone for me. And it's something where I know when I come out here and I show up, it's like, there's going to be somebody that I know, it's, you know, Kimball or whoever, that I've shared either track time with or some experience that I can always relate and just have a good time.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just enjoyable to me. So I love it.
Yeah,
nice.
And I think that the string of SuperNats will be continuing for quite some time after this. Then.
Exactly. Yeah. Look out, Bonner Moulton.
Nice.
The new stretch is going to happen. John, thanks so much for coming out here and spending time with us. It's so much fun to be able to have these conversations, people get to know them and whatnot, and then actually have that little piece of what the journey is going to go from here. And I'm really excited to see how you do it SuperNats and see how you do it the SKUSA race, actually. So
no, I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate it, guys. Like, this has been really fun. Like I told Derek, I said, you know, I just took a trip and I ended up listening to about 15 hours of your guys' podcast, and you're so entertaining, and, you know, just give me kind of a history, you know, or a look back into, you know, kind of the karting that I remember, which is great, you know, hearing the names and the old stories and stuff, and you know, I listen to them on my treadmill, you know, and it just gets the juices flowing. I love it.
That appreciation for it again, right?
Yep.
Just thinking back to all those older days. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've added yet another fantastic episode and great story to the whole thing. And I'm looking forward to hearing it again after I go through editing. And again, thanks so much for coming out on board, bud.
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
it.